Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Today Mañana. I'm Michael, happy to be joined by Xavier on a nice, warm day.
Beautiful, yeah, good morning.
Today's not a day to grab a hot cafe con leche, for sure. You got to put like 3-4 ices in there, yeah. And then maybe a couple on your back or your neck, something just to keep yourself cool, right?
Well, I guess if you're indoors and you got air conditioning, it's not too bad.
Yeah, but even then, it's so hot. I remember yesterday we were in our office, and I was just like, I wanted to go check the air. I said, man, it feels hot. And I looked, and it was like, no, it's 72 in the office. I was like, no, it's working. But I guess it's one of those things where it's like visually, like you're looking outside, and you know it's hot. And you look outside, and you see the sun. You're like, oh, I feel hot just looking outside.
Well, you just put your hand on the windows, and you just feel that heat off the windows. So that's
like, and it's like I was telling you, it was like the reverse of kind of winter. Because one time winter, you look outside, you see the trees, there's no leaves, it's cloudy. And it's like, I feel cold. But inside, it's warm. But it's like suddenly, like, I feel cold. You know, that's when Mama would be like, oh, get me a blanket, hot cup of tea, something like that. But as always, we are happy to be presented by Emergent Financial Services and powered by our sponsor, Charlottesville Opera, Matthias, Realty. I know we had a couple big topics today that we want to discuss.
Yeah, but even just before that, so I just want to remind everybody that this weekend, right, and I think it starts tomorrow, is the opera, which is Carmen.
Yeah, Charlottesville Opera is doing right? Carmen. Mm-hmm.
And, it really is one of the most popular and most frequently played operas because I think, there's about 2 or 3 songs that just about everybody knows. Mm-hmm. Well,
You'll know it even if you don't even know what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Once you hear it, say, oh, I've heard that before, right? You got the Habanera, you got the Toreador, right? Mm-hmm. And so, it is, a very good opera. And like I said, it was written by George Bizet. Well, the music was, I'm not sure if the words were or not. I'm not sure about that. But, I mean, it's, so I think it's,
so there's a performance tomorrow night at 7:30, I believe, and then there's another performance on Saturday at 2 p.m., and then another one, I believe, Sunday at 2 p.m. Yeah. And you could get your tickets at Charlottesville Opera, their website, or you could get them at the Paramount website.
And I recommend it if you haven't, been exposed to operas. This is one of those operas that truly. The music is lively to a certain respect, and
Have you actually ever seen Carmen before?
Oh, many times.
You saw many times.
Yeah, many times. Yeah, it is. I just remember I used to go with my mother, and it's one of the operas, like I said, which I enjoyed because of the fact that it was lively. I mean, like all operas, there's the melodrama and stuff like that, but the music itself was very enjoyable. So I highly recommend it for people.
What kind of operas did Abuelita like? Did she like?
Oh, she liked them all.
She liked them all.
Yeah, she's a little bit like Nikki. She's just liked them all. I mean, I used to. I mean, to be honest with you, the part of the reason that I used to go to the opera with my mother was because my father got tired of seeing all the operas. Right, he liked them, but not to the point where it's like, yeah, I've seen that one, I've seen that one, I've seen that one. Right, but my mother was like, since she had the free tickets because she did the costumes, so my father said, "You want to take your mother to the opera?" I said, "You mean drive my mother to the opera?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Yeah, because I could drive. Because I love to drive, so I drive into the city, and that's how you get exposed to it."
Well, those are the good old days. Maybe driving to the city wasn't as bad as today. Because I mean, if someone said you want to drive to the city, you're like, "No, I'll pass. I'll pass. Let's just take the subway. I will pass." Because you're not driving. You're sitting there in traffic, going, and then getting honked.
I mean, there was traffic, but not to the point where it was, it was also late at night already. So opera started around 7:30, 8 o'clock. Finished around 11 o'clock, so by that time the traffic was a little lighter. But that's how I got exposed to it, and I there were quite a few number that I enjoyed, and others that was like,
that's like everything, even musicals.
Yeah,
there's a balance. But you're gonna whip out your old tuxedo tomorrow. Got to dust it off.
I don't think I use my tuxedo in Charlottesville.
You never know.
It's
a little James Bond tuxedo.
James Bond tuxedo with my bow tie. Exactly. I still have all that stuff, but I don't. Hopefully it fits. I'm not sure about that.
I bet you it fits.
Yeah, pretty close. So anyway, I like I said, I highly recommend that. People take a look at that, and if you ever wanted to go to an opera, at least your first one, this is probably not a bad one. At least from my opinion.
No, the music's great. I mean, there's little doubt.
And it's a classic.
Charlottesville Opera does a great job.
They do.
All
the
really performances and the music. So
So I would say that. And the other thing was, I always forget to say that Sombreros now has They opened up their little Sombreros Cafe, which is on York Place, right? They used to have their restaurant all the way in the back. Now they've moved to the front, right? So you can see the sign. You can see them right up front. It's called, I think, the Sombreros Cafe. It's, always, Lucrecia, Bernardo, they're fantastic people. They're so sweet, wonderful, great food, great coffee. So if you happen to be walking up and down, the mall there, stop in and, you can just say hello, Lucrecia, and she'll give you a big smile and and a wonderful cup of coffee and whatever else you're looking for. So
no, they're great people.
They really are. They really are. But anyway, so that was, I just want to make sure I got that in there.
Yeah, and you got one more thing you got to get in.
Oh, don't forget to like and share. That one? And subscribe.
There you go.
A little button right here.
There you go.
There you go.
One day we'll get you to do that. Xavier's going to push the button.
I like doing that, yeah.
Well, some people do that, like in their videos. They kind of like, share and subscribe, and the buttons are popping up. Not great. It's not a live video.
Right,
it's recorded,
exactly. It's recorded, yeah.
Still, it's kind of like, okay, Not that I ever press those buttons, Whenever I'm the reverse, when someone says, make sure you like and share the video, I'm like, nah, I'm not liking and sharing. Don't tell me what to do.
Don't tell me what to do. Well, they say, if you like the show, don't forget to like and share, right?
Yeah, I don't think they usually say this. They say, make sure to like, share.
All right, well, I'll say, if you like the show, don't forget to like and share. There you go. And if you don't, do it anyway, will you?
Listen, I never like any show I'm on, so don't worry about it. But I know you got a couple of topics you want to talk about. I don't know which one you kind of want to jump into first. A little of the Fed and Powell, or you want to kind of jump into the other topic? So
let's do the other one topic first, only because I think it's one of those areas where, it may help some folks. And this is a topic, the reason I thought about it was because I'd say over the last 6 months, more than anything else, we've had so many people come to our office, right? And it seems to be the same kind of questions over and over again. And I recognize that this is an area of the marketplace with regard to the type of accounts, trusts and wills that a lot of people have challenges with, right? And one of the things that a lot of people always come to office and say, we're thinking about putting, all our accounts into trusts, right, et cetera, right? And I always say, well, before we do that, right, let's think about, what it is that you're trying to accomplish, right? Because to be honest with you, what people don't recognize is that, especially within your IRAs or your Roths or even your brokerage account, if you just have a regular brokerage account, within those accounts, you can name beneficiaries and contingent beneficiaries. So what does that mean? So let's say it's your account. Let's say it's Michael Urpí's IRA account, right? You can name a beneficiary. So let's say you were married. The first beneficiary would be your wife most of the time, right? But then you say, well, what if when I'm older and let's say my wife passes away before I do, then what happens, right? Then it, quote unquote, goes to your estate. But maybe that's not what you want. You want to make sure that you apply that particular account to specific people, right? So then you can have what is called contingent beneficiaries, meaning that beneficiary A could be your son, beneficiary B could be your daughter, or whoever it may be, right? And you can split it up 50-50, you can split it up 60-40, any way you want to split it up, right? You can then rename those contingent beneficiaries, right? And the reason that's important is because once, when you pass away then, right, those accounts immediately go to those people, right? Which is great. Notice the investment advisor will reach out. I mean, obviously somebody has to call and say, hey, this particular person passed away. You say, fine, can you send us the death certificate? So then we need to then create what they call inherited IAs for the different account members, right? But we reach out to them, right, and say, okay, you are getting 50% of this particular account, and the other person is getting 50%. You create an inherited IA, and it bypasses any probate. It's done immediately. You don't have to worry about what's in the will. You don't have to worry about anything, right? It's very simple. You can do that for IRAs. You can do that for Roth accounts, and you can do that for brokerage accounts.
Now, when it gets passed from death, do you have to pay taxes on, or is it? There's no taxes.
No, so as long as that, and when you're talking about an IRA or a Roth, right? The Roth is never taxed, no matter what, right? So that wouldn't be an issue, right? But in the IRA, what you want to do, like I said, is create what is called an inherited IRA, right?
Okay.
So then there is now the 10-year rule, which basically says that you have to pull those funds out within a 10-year time frame, right?
Okay.
If the person that had the IRA was already receiving required minimum distributions, you have to follow that required minimum distribution.
Okay.
So you have to continue to get some funds on a yearly basis. On the Roth, though, that's the beauty. The Roth, right, again, it's not a taxable account. I mean, once you convert it, there's no taxes due, but you can hold that for 10 years, and that grows tax-free, and at the end of 10 years, then yes, you convert that into a regular brokerage account. But now you have 10 years worth of, growth that has never been taxed and it won't be taxed. And all of a sudden, boom, you have those funds. And then after that, of course, is whatever you earn will be taxed.
What are some of the complications that come with, because we've had some complications where we've had clients come in and they've had a trust that's been passed down. And I know we've had some issues sometimes kind of getting that. What are some of the issues that sometimes come with trusts?
So that's the one point. I'm glad you asked that, because that's the one point that I always try to inform our clients. That is, unless you have typically like a special needs child, right? Or some other needs that you want to make sure it's taken care of. Or you have, let's say, a lot of real estate, right? And you want to go ahead and put that into a trust. I can understand that, right? The issue with putting IRAs and Roths, et cetera, into your trust is that you have to do it the right way, right? And what I mean by that is we have seen circumstances where whoever created that trust didn't do it quite correctly, and all of a sudden the person passes away, that IRA then goes into the trust and it becomes taxable, right? Because it's not an inherited IRA anymore. It just simply gets transferred into the trust. And that becomes, again, it becomes a taxable event. And the last thing you want is for all your IRA to become a taxable event, because a great portion of that IRA is going to be gone in that year, right? So that's why I always say, be very careful, because there's no need to put an IRA into a trust whatsoever. There's no need to put a Roth into a trust. There's not even a need to put a regular brokerage account into a trust, right? There's absolutely no requirement whatsoever, because, again, once you have those beneficiaries lined up properly the way you want your particular accounts to be split up, that's the important part, right? And then you might not even need a trust. You just have a will that basically specifies the rest of your estate, how you want that broken up, right? So most of the time, what we explain to our clients and say, unless there's a very special situation, just having beneficiaries and having a will is all you need. That's all you need. You don't need anything else. Again, unless you have an estate that is worth over $5 million or $14 million, which is what obviously then you become the estate tax for the federal. $5 million, I think, is the estate tax for Virginia. Depending what state you are, that might change. Then yes, you may want to say, how do I avoid those particular estate taxes or try to mitigate that? Then there are ways that you can do that within trust, right? But if that's not the case, right, then really there's absolutely very little reason most of the time to go into a trust. Now, doesn't mean you shouldn't sit down with a particular attorney, but I would say go to your financial advisor first. Have them run your plan. When you run a plan, you'll be able to tell what is it that really should go into an estate, into a trust, right? And when you at least go then to the attorney, right, you can discuss, well, should this really be into a trust? I mean, I've been told it's not necessary, and see what he says or she says in the explanation as to why it should and shouldn't, and then the choice is yours. But as I mentioned, it's making sure that your accounts have beneficiaries is the most important thing. And as I mentioned, it's not just the beneficiary being your husband or your wife, but also contingent beneficiaries, right? Yeah. In other words, God forbid that person passes away before you do, what happens next, right? And make sure you have that all lined up and outlined in the account so that no matter what happens, you know that those funds are going to the appropriate people the way you want to split it up. So that, like I said, it's just one of those areas that more and more people come into our office and request some guidance, and we've been able to at least.
And it's so easy to apply beneficiaries or contingent beneficiaries to an IRA or Roth IRA. I mean, literally, it's like one paper document. You put in their information, usually just a name, phone number, email, address, and then, literally that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Done. And then now they're going to be the beneficiary of an IRA. So, yeah, it's just, we've seen so many times, like, clients come in and it's just like they had a trust, and it's always the same thing. I had to pay taxes. I think one time we had a client who's like, remember, he needed like some sort of certificate, and they
lost it. So what happened was, that was a situation where there was a trust. The client themselves didn't have the original trust. They couldn't find it.
Yes.
The attorney they did it with passed away.
They couldn't find the
original.
Yeah, it was.
And the custodian themselves said, without any documentation, I can't release this. So it took.
And that's another thing too. I mean, think about it, right? The custodian now has control of your
assets.
Assets.
Exactly.
It's a kind of a bit frightening, situation or circumstance. So, it would be a nice way to avoid that is literally just, again, you have beneficiaries, like Xavier saying, it's passed, and, once you let your financial advisor know, okay, well, this person passed away, or whoever had the IRA, you just open up and inherited.
Exactly. No, it's very quickly.
It's very quick, yes.
It's very easy, quick, and, it avoids probate, it avoids all the headaches.
Yes.
And so most of the time, we just highly recommend that that's the best way to do it. And like you said, it's so simple. It's just, you just make sure that you provide your financial advisor the information that he or she needs in order to put into the account, and that's done. And that's the other thing I also recommend is review that with your clients on a regular basis, right? Make sure that when they come in, we say, okay, is this still good? These are the beneficiaries. Are we still in good shape here? Because there may be changes.
And I think especially for people too. I mean, obviously, naturally, if you are a husband, your IRA is going to be given to your wife, correct? I mean, that's usually the law. But I guess maybe in particular, if you wanted to kind of just, if you're a single person and it's like, well, I want some of this money to go to, my sister, my brother, but I also want, the contingents to potentially be, my nieces or nephews. That's when you really kind of want to start focusing about,
correct.
Okay, let me really focus on who my beneficiaries are, and, another thing too, I guess, I mean, if you are, so let's say, for example, I'm married and I have 3 kids. If I make, let's say, both of us die, like in a car accident, right? Does that mean my IRA immediately go to my 3 kids? How does that get split up? Or would I need to put contingent beneficiaries saying, I want to split up 3 ways between my 3 kids?
So that's the best way to do it. I mean, again, if you don't do anything, then it goes to an estate, right? The estate is then follow through with your will, right? And the estate, and then is your 3 children, right? But again, what happens then is that it may go into probate, right? Because there's no direction from you as to who gets what and how much, right? So one child may say, well, no, I spoke to mom or dad, and they told me I was supposed to get 50% of this because you're getting, you got the car or whatever, right? So it starts that whole, challenge of who's getting what, right? So, the best thing is always to have that and say, yes, this is exactly what's happening. Yeah. So that it just eliminates. And the other thing is, so they're also, when you put in, so let's say, God forbid, you said you have 3 children, you put all 3 children, right? But one of you before you pass away, one of your children passes away, but they also have children. You can have it such that the portion that belonged to him goes to your grandchildren as opposed to the other 2, right? So there's, there are ways to set it up so that, yes, the other 2 then just don't get his portion. He still has it. It doesn't necessarily go.
It just passes down.
It just passes down the line to, and you can then name the grandchildren, right? So again, that's why it's good to review that all the time because, again, you have children. Now they have children. So it's great to say, all right, now we have a situation where we want to make sure that if something happens to this particular person, it then flows down to the next generation.
Yeah,
right?
These things can slip through the cracks as the months fly by and the years.
Easily, no, very easily. So again, it's good. You need to really sit down with your financial advisor. Or if you're doing it on yourself, just wherever you're using Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard, whatever you use, right? Just make sure that you go look at your account and who you have down as beneficiaries, and make sure that you review that often enough to know that it's up to date and it's exactly how you want it set up. But it's first of all, it's a lot more affordable than doing trust.
Yes.
Trust can be extremely expensive. It's a lot cleaner to a certain respect. And in the end, trust can be just as big a headache as not having beneficiaries on those accounts. So it's I just highly recommend that if again, unless you have
trust
an enormous
and wills
estate.
always seem to get very complicated. Right?
Yes, but the wills can be wills can be a little easier, right?
Well, I mean, if they're written out, yes,
of course, of course.
I misspoke. What I meant to say is like if someone does and they don't have a will, then things.
Oh no. All that's important. It's something that you don't think about. It's always mañana, right? Right. But every once in a while, you have to sit back and say, wait a minute, I really do need to create a will to make sure that it's only because what you're doing is making sure that whoever inherits your estate doesn't go through a headache. And I say that truly because we've seen that so much with clients that, their spouse passes away and, oh Lord, I mean, sometimes the challenges that they have to put things together back because they didn't have information, this wasn't written down, and it becomes complicated.
Yes.
So it's always best to have everything
and even sometimes
in order.
even among siblings, these things can get very complicated too. People don't realize it because anytime money starts getting involved in land, and it's just like, well, I want this, I always wanted this, my mama always said that I get this. It's like, no, she said I could have. It's like, oof, and then it's explained, well, you, like you said, you got the house, you shouldn't have this portion of, the IRA or the Roth, that should go to me because I didn't get this. It's like now it becomes absolutely.
No, it can be very complicated, and that's a good point, right? Because one of the children could say, boy, I don't want to sell mom and dad's house because I want to live there.
Yeah.
I said, well, mom and dad's house is worth $500,000, so are you going to pay us for the 1/3 of it? And so it's always important to make sure that everything is clear, and and the children have to have a conversation with their parents too, and vice versa, and saying, listen, this is what we'd like, how do we work this out, right? And I've seen that happen before where clients come in and say, we just had a discussion with our children, and this is what we come up with, therefore we're going to leave the house to this particular person, which means that the IRA now goes to him and the Roth goes to the other person, which is perfect, because now everybody is in clear as to, what's going to happen. But again, the important thing is, visit your financial advisor, do a financial plan if you can, and then try to figure all this out to make sure that, when the time comes, everything is in order and headaches are avoided,
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, I wanted to bring that up because I think
that's
a lot of people,
information.
a lot of people just forget little details like that, and I think it's very important.
No, it is very important. I think again, it's one of those things that again, it's almost like sometimes when people kind of forget to kind of basically be like, hey, after I die, I should get in contact, pay for my funeral services, or pick out my gravestone or whatever, figure out where I want to be buried. Because again, it's like these are things you don't necessarily want to think about. Like, who are my beneficiaries are going to be? Because now you're thinking about like, when I die. But nobody ever wants to think about that. Right. Unfortunately, it is important, especially when it comes to your money, to kind of get that settled. And like you said, have experience with trust that can be very complicated. There's a much simpler and easier way to kind of have your money pass on to whoever you wish to pass it on to.
Exactly. Yeah. And like I said, it's not. And again, this is not a knock on trust. They serve a purpose, but you just have to sit back and try to figure out what is it you're trying to accomplish, and maybe what you're trying to accomplish doesn't require a trust, right? Yeah. If it does, then fine. Go to an attorney, set up a trust, do what's necessary. But there are just many instances where you sit there and go that you don't need a trust for what you're trying to accomplish, because it could be done easily, and that's important. The important thing, more than anything else, is like you said, just make sure that as events happen in your life, and those are things that like the first time I had my first child, right? And then because up to that time it's like I didn't have life insurance. What do I need life insurance for, right? You have your first child, boom. Yeah. Okay, now I got to think about life insurance.
Alex and Nick are at that point. So now they're like, oh man, I got to get life insurance because
God forbid you pass away. You want to make sure that your wife and your children are taken care of.
Before they had kids, I was gonna get all everything. Not
anymore.
Not anymore. It's like Scar from the Lion King. It's like,
lost.
What?
That's right. You just
I lost that.
You lost all their wealth.
All their wealth. All those Legos. Then gone. I can't get them. They're getting passed down.
Well, maybe you can negotiate.
Yeah.
I want that one.
I want that one. See, that's why you need it.
Can we put a beneficiary on that Lego?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah.
But I know there was another topic you kind of want to discuss. I'm sure people probably want to hear your thoughts about the Fed not raising interest rates.
My thoughts on the Fed?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen,
it was pretty expected
that they weren't going to do anything, and I think that's why the market basically didn't have really a negative reaction.
Yeah.
But I was just curious about your thoughts about what Powell had said. I mean, apparently they're expecting unemployment to rise. They're expecting GDP to be lower. I think we saw somewhere this morning that they were like the expectation was the Fed. Well, I guess maybe other people's expectation was the GDP would be 1.7%, but the Fed thinks it's going to be close to 1.4. Not exactly sure where they got that number, but I'm just curious your thoughts about all that.
Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma that the Fed has, right? Because on one side, they're looking at the tariffs and they're saying, well, tariffs are inflationary, right? And they're saying, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? We don't know, right? So if I lower interest rates and then you have inflation, right, that's going to be a problem, right? On the other side, though, is, well, we don't see the economy really booming. We see the economy maybe beginning to contract. And therefore, unemployment rate, the employment situation is going to be a problem, right? So remember, the role of the Fed is dual, right? One is the unemployment, one is inflation. So they're sitting there and going, these are my two kind of roles. But from my perspective, you say, well, on one side, you're saying that the expectation is that the economy is slowing down, the unemployment rate is, the employment's going to be struggling, right? But you're worried about inflation. Well, on one side, that means if you think that basically unemployment is going to be a challenge, or the rate's going to go up, and two, that the economy is slowing down, you should lower rates, right? Because that will improve the economy, right? On the other side, though, you're also worried about inflation, so you can't you can't lower rates because you think inflation is going to come down the pipeline. But my issue is that the inflation rate that we had after COVID really was the supply side inflation, and two, we just printed $2 trillion worth of free money, which created an enormous amount of demand without the supply being there, right? So that was a one-off situation that, just had never really occurred before. So you're using that as the expectation of what can happen here. And I think if you look back at the previous time where tariffs were raised, you look so far this year, we really haven't seen an inflationary spike, right? So
I mean, at this point, the tariffs have been on since what would you say, March? I mean, on and off for sure. But
right, but remember, I think it's in July where where basically he's going to start imposing, on some of these other countries.
Okay, so the window keeps getting pushed back.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. Trump is a deal maker, right? I mean, so no matter how we look at it, what he does is he tries to put pressure on these other countries to come to the table and say, wait a minute, I mean, if this really happens, it's going to hurt us. It's going to hurt you, right, because prices are going up, but it's going to hurt us because you're going to import less. If you import less, then our country's going to suffer, right? And so they may come to the table and say, okay, let's find a way where this works for both of us, and that's what he wants, right? So, the concept that, he puts on a tariff and then takes it back, no, he does that because he wants them to come to the table so we can negotiate and find a better solution, both and I think he's honest enough. It's like, it's got to be a solution that works for us, and it's got to be a solution that, also works for them, right? It can't be just one way. So I think that's why he does this. But my feeling is, if you're thinking, especially if you're thinking about passing this particular bill, right, which has enormous amount of tax cuts. I mean, one of them, it's not really a tax cut, it's just continuing the tax cuts that we have for the last 10 years, right? So if you don't pass the bill, then taxes are going to go up for everybody, right? So one of them is just continuing that. And the other one, obviously, there are some tax cuts that, no tax on Social Security, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, right? Which, when you look at it, I don't think that's an enormous, I mean, how many people, I guess restaurants are a little different today, but in the old days, I mean, you got a cash tip you put in your pocket. I don't think anybody went home and said, I made, $150 today. I got to remember to put that on my taxes. No, you didn't do that, right? But I think in today's world, being that everything is credit card, there's a more tracking of those tips. So obviously that's beneficial. So my viewpoint is, though, if the economy begins to do well, right, if you turn this economy around, well, not turn it around, but if you continue to push this economy so it continues to grow, right, a lot of the problems as far as, tax revenue it begins to get solved. The more you generate in taxes based on people purchasing, the less trouble you have as far as, saving on taxes on the other side. So my feeling was, I don't think it would have been detrimental for the Fed to say, yeah, we're going to do a 25 basis point cut here, right? Because historically we haven't seen inflation really spike because of tariffs, right? And we haven't seen it. So if we haven't seen it, what makes us think that we're going to see it, right? We keep saying
it seems like they're not lowering interest rates on the presumption that, well, inflation may go up, even though already for the past, I want to say, 4 or 5 months, we've seen the inflation number kind of a little lower than they keep projecting. Yeah. So in that case, it's been pretty good. And like you said, if you're also looking at it from the perspective of, okay, we really think the economy is going to start slowing down. Well, why don't you go on what you're seeing numbers-wise for, the economy, rather than just saying, well, we don't want to lower it on the presumption that inflation may go up, even though we haven't seen that reality happen yet.
Right. And let's face it, I mean, rates are 4.25%, 4.5%. That's the range they have. So having to lower the 0.25%, I don't think it would have been a dramatic change one way or the other. But I think it would have been an indication that, hey, the Fed sees the economy as, maybe we're getting weaker and therefore they're lowering. And I think that would have been an impetus, for the whole markets and everything, right? And in the end, I think they also.
Can I ask a quick question? Yeah. When was the last time they lowered it? Was it last year? September or something like that?
So I can't remember the exact date. They lowered it 3 times.
3 times last year. But they have it so far this year?
No, they haven't, So anyway,
what was the reason for lowering it last year? Because inflation had stabilized?
Yeah, so I remember, inflation came from 9 to 7 down to 3%. So they had no reason why not to, But
now what's inflation, 1% or 1.5%?
No, it's still north of 2%.
Okay.
And it's there are some there are some sticky numbers out there, right? So I think it's very difficult to have inflation drop dramatically in here, especially if you're going to begin to kind of again transition from importing to producing in this country. I think it's going to be a little difficult to have that inflation number drop really quickly, right? It's going to, I think, stay a little sticky here for a while until then you produce. But and I've talked about this. I think between robotics and AI, I think there's a lot of work that can be done that replaces with like it or not human labor, and that really allows production to be a lot cheaper than it used to be in the past. So we'll see. I mean, it's a long road. I think the Fed is being, I don't know. Their history is that they're always behind the 8 ball, and
I don't know if you know the nickname. Trump calls him Too Late Pal.
Too Late Pal.
He's like, he was too late to raise them, 3 years ago, and then now he's too late to lower them.
Yeah. I mean, I guess every president wants the Fed to lower rates because it makes the economy boom, right? So we'll see. I mean, he did mention that the trajectories for lowering them 2 times this year, but I would, again, their message was kind of a little vague to me in the sense that you see the numbers and you're saying if you're data dependent and you're seeing the numbers show that the economy is slowing down, but there's no inflation, then why didn't you lower rates, right? So you can't, on the one hand, you can't say you're data dependent, and then the next minute you say, yeah, but we're looking out, we also have to look out into the future. Well, then you're the data dependent, You either
have
look
a
in the
problem
future
now, and you're not fixing the problem now because you're worried about a potential problem later.
Exactly.
Doesn't really make sense because then you might have both problems.
They keep shifting, and that's part of the issue. Is that the markets like it better when it's like this is, we see the data, and therefore this is what we're doing based on that. And like I said, I don't think a quarter of a point would have done any damage from an inflationary point of view. And again, we haven't seen it yet, and we'll see. It's one of those things where the tariffs haven't caused inflation up to now. I mean, if you think about it, the riskier situation we're in is not really tariffs, but really is this conflict between Israel and Iran, because obviously oil prices start to go up. And if there is a larger skirmish there, you're going to see commodities rise in price, and commodities are inflationary. So that's a bigger problem, really, than tariffs, in my opinion. So, I mean, but he didn't talk about that. So obviously they're not, that's not a concern to them. But yet, for me, that's a bigger concern in the sense that is a genuine problem. That if that becomes an all-out skirmish there. You're going to see commodity prices. I mean, gold already spiked. Oil has gone up already. Platinum has spiked. So, those are, the commodities are an area where from a global point of view, when there's uncertainty and nervousness, commodities begin to go up. And commodities have been down for a long time. So, from a perspective of them having a rise wouldn't be out of the norm. So. But we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
It's been a very interesting year.
It keeps you at least on your toes. You're not bored at the office.
No, I'm definitely not bored at the office.
You're not pulling up solitaire, going like,
I never played that anyway. But
you're a pinball guy. Do you remember the old Windows when they used to have? Do you remember the way back when the Windows used like the little pinball game? Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah, you used to play on your keyboard or something like that. No. Yeah, there was like a little pinball thing. Yeah.
I mean, I remember genuine pinball. There used to be a pinball machine when I used to go to NYU. There was a little restaurant, and they used to have a happy hour starting at 4:00, right? And my friend and me, we used to have a class for some reason, like a 5 o'clock class. I forget what it was, quantitative analysis. I forget which one it was, right? So we'd meet there at 4:00. We'd have a tuna sandwich because this is my friend, and we used to call him Tony Tuna because he used to love tuna all the time. So we have a tuna sandwich, and then we'd have a drink. Yeah. And we used to play pinball. I used to love pinball, and that's when we'd be sit there playing pinball, and waiting for our class, and then 4:45 walk.
What was it, like a quarter to play or a nickel? How much was it?
Yeah, I don't remember. It was probably a quarter, 10 cents, something like that. Yeah, it was probably a quarter at the time. I don't think it was 10 cents, but it used to be a lot of fun, and people bang the machine because they'd miss, and it's like
stupid machine.
Yeah, exactly.
I had that.
They'd shake the machine to get the ball. It was amazing what people would do. It's like, wait a minute. How's this fair?
Yeah. Well, at least the machine you can't complain. Online, totally. Sometimes you'd be like, come on, I hit that. Stupid thing.
Yeah, the machine's good because it was automatic. I mean, it's, mechanical. Yeah. So you hit the button, boom, you see the...
Exactly,
and you could just time it. Except for when that ball came right down the middle. It's like,
I love too when every once in a while you could see it coming down the middle. You just knew you hit something and it's not even coming at you like that's going right down the middle. And you just
that was when people shift the thing. Like try to hit it.
That's not
exactly. That's not fair. That's cheating.
That's cheating. Can't stand that.
Yeah. So that's when I used to play pinball. Other than that, I don't remember playing pinball on the computer.
You don't have much time playing on the computer. You got your garden to tend to.
That's more important.
So where are we up to in the garden? This is where you kind of update your viewers, because last time you hadn't really planted them. Last time I had you on
everything's planted
ago,
now.
Now they're planted.
Everything's planted now. Tomatoes are doing great. Zucchinis are doing great. The melons are starting to really catch up.
Well, I think you've already gotten a couple of zucchinis, right?
Yes,
I mean, how big are they? Not that big?
No, well, so, Mom doesn't like them huge. She likes them on the smaller side, right? Because she says they're sweeter, less seeds and all that. So, not really tiny, but so we had a couple of those, and there's a lot of them growing because we got a growing family, so we'll try to get as much as possible.
So this time of year, do you still have them covered?
No,
you've uncovered them now.
I've uncovered everything,
So now they can take the sun and everything, so they help them grow. Okay.
Yeah, they better take the sun because it's gonna be hot. So we got the string beans going. The cucumbers are coming up. I mean, everything. The ones that are really struggling the most right now is the
eggplants.
The eggplants, which
they always struggle early on, though. Every year, it's
because they're on the smaller side, right? But those little tiny black bugs, they're already on them, and so they eat. It's incredible how quickly they eat these leaves, and so they eat the leaves, and therefore it doesn't get the photosynthesis anymore, right? So the plant struggles to grow. And I'm out there at the end of the day because I can't do it in the morning because if you spray, I use the 7, right? Because it's the closest thing to. I can put the dust, but I don't have time to do everything.
Can I ask you a question? Is it possible, beneficial to potentially? This might get a little more complicated, but not put them in the beds yet. Put them in separate planters. Leave them out during the day to get the sun. Because when do the bugs get on them? At night,
at night is when the bugs come in.
So while you put them in planters, you keep them in the sun, and then once night comes, before you go to bed, you bring them in the porch.
That's a lot of work,
But
I mean, let's face it. I got about 10 eggplants out there.
Well, then at least do 5 of them. This way, if I
maybe I should do a few and bring them in. Actually, I got 2 in pots, so maybe I'll do that.
Yeah, put them out in the sun during the day. I mean, you could just leave them, right, kind of in front, and then during the day, then at night before you go in, you just bring them inside the porch.
Yeah, maybe.
Just so
because it's at night. But that's when I'll do a little spray and catch them. But if I forget, it's just amazing how quickly it's like. And I got brand new dirt this year. It's like it's all brand new dirt. I did a nice job.
We had a really nice cold winter. I thought there wouldn't be as many bugs, and they still always survive. I don't know how they survive.
I don't know where they come from.
How do they live?
I don't know.
Like we need a freaking house and blankets to survive in the winter. They're out there, these little bugs, and somehow they live.
Well, I guess because one egg probably generates like 1,000 of these bugs. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what.
I don't understand.
Yeah. That's the most frustrating. Is really the bugs are the things that just frustrate me to no end.
This is the biggest existential crisis we're facing in this world. There's too many freaking bugs, and no one's got a solution for it.
Not even the Fed.
Somebody's got to figure this out. I mean, not all these bugs got to be beneficial. You want the bees, fine. We'll keep some of the bees, but all these other bugs.
Bees, ladybugs.
These little beetle things. Can't we get rid of them?
There's beetles like that. Yeah.
Mosquitoes. I don't know what beneficial they got to be. Ticks.
Yeah.
Get rid of them.
Ticks definitely not. Yeah.
I mean, it's a bad tick here too.
Yeah, I don't get that either. I've had people that do the same thing. Garden clients of ours that enjoy gardening, and they're doing the same. They tell me the same thing. She's like, they've already had ticks on them like crazy. It's like I thought the cold was supposed to kill all these guys.
Well, you know what eats ticks, but the problem is possums. Possums is the best thing. They eat like ticks like crazy.
Chickens eat ticks?
Chickens eat ticks?
I don't know.
Well, we're going to have to figure out. I don't think Mama's going to want a possum.
Ducks do, but
ducks?
That's what Nick told me. Ducks eat ticks.
Ducks? Well, then
I would think they eat more
duck
ticks.
in the
Those
backyard.
ticks are pretty small. How can they get full of ticks?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Whatever. Something's got to go eat those ticks because I'm tired of them. Get a pet possum.
Is there such a thing?
No, I'm glad the garden's doing well. I'm sure viewers probably want an update on that. They've probably been sitting the past month saying, "What happened with Xavier's garden? I need some."
Is some still working?
Tips, yeah.
Tips, yeah. Well, that's why I watch that. Like I said, the YouTube only because obviously we try the best we can to have all organic in the sense I don't use pesticide, right? And I rarely do. Every once in a while, you have no choice. But like I said, I use the 7 a little bit. But I've tried so many different things here and there, the neem oil, and now I got something else that the guy recommended. I bought it, and it's organic, so I'll try that this year. And
where is this gardener? The Millennium
he's
gardener?
in North Carolina.
Okay,
so they have the same type of weather, yeah.
Okay, because I was curious whether if he was like somewhere else, I'd be like, well, maybe he doesn't have the bugs, but no, North Carolina's got the same.
He talks about the bugs, he talks about the heat, the thunderstorms, so pretty much what we go through,
Yeah.
So
I guess if you really want a nice garden, go to California.
It's incredible over there, I know, though. It's incredible how.
I remember talking to a friend we know, and it was like the same thing. He's like, he was talking about his son's property. He's like, forget it. It's like you plant something, and it's like he said he came back a year later. It was like oranges and lemons everywhere. His son was like, "What'd you plant?" I got all these like melons and stuff like that. He's like, he didn't even take care of it, and it just grew.
Yeah,
you know. Amazing. And here you're out there killing the bugs, giving it bone
feeding, watering,
bone meal, whatever, nitrogen, testing the dirt, and then you're getting 2 plants. two
I got 1 eggplant. How do you like that?
And it's terrible.
And at the end, it only cost me, $50 for that?
The mama complains, it's all seeds. I had to take all the seeds. No, but to be fair, it's worth the effort when you do have the garden because everything tastes better. The eggplants are delicious and very sweet.
Yeah, they are.
The tomatoes are like sugar. The zucchinis are very good, The peppers are very good. I mean, everything's really worth it. It's just... It was just a lot of work.
It's a lot of work,
Whether it's cost productive is another discussion.
Well, it is over time. It is over time.
You think you save money?
Probably.
What's the time is money, though? If your time is money?
From my time, no. I mean, if you include my time, no. But that's the weekend, so I don't. The
true.
weekend is.
Or at night,
enjoy.
Or at night, so.
Yeah, and listen, for me, it's an enjoyment, right? I just go out there and I just kind of clear my mind. I'm not thinking about. I can't be thinking about, everything that goes around the world for 24 hours a day because you go crazy. So it's an ability for me just to cleanse the mind and not worry about other things, and then get up in the morning and start worrying again.
Yeah. Another great way to cleanse the mind, I'll do one last reminder. If you want a nice relaxation, Carmen's going to be on tomorrow, so please make sure to get your tickets. The performance tomorrow night at 7:30, one on Saturday at 2, and then the last one I believe is Sunday at 2.
Yeah.
So.
No, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to that. I do enjoy that opera very much.
And I always enjoy having you on the show, Pops.
Same here. Thank you so much.
We had a good show. I do believe we will have guests on next week. Or 2 weeks from now.
Yeah.
But don't remember who it was. But this way, now you get to. It's conveniently I don't remember because now you have to check back in 2 weeks to see who the mystery guest is.
Exactly.
But always big thank you to Pops for being there and sharing his wisdom.
Thank you.
Big thank you to Judah for being behind the camera. It was an easy day for him, but. Not too much moving around. It's probably just you and me, one shot all day long. But
I think we got the mics done too now.
Yeah, I think we got the mics done.
Then people move back. It's they're in front, and you can't hear them. Yeah.
Next time we want Judah on the show, we'll just put the mics really far away so he has to come and fix it.
I'll do that next time. Put it right far away.
What's
Xavier doing?
Yeah. But big thank you to I Love CVille for always having us here. Thank you to all our viewers for watching. What was I going to say? Thank you for our viewers for watching. If you had any questions, again, forgive Xavier and I, we don't have a computer.
Well, I told Nick to send me stuff, but he didn't, so it means that maybe
nobody had any questions.
Either that or I missed it, which is always possible.
Yeah, it's always possible. But without our viewers, we really wouldn't have our show.
Absolutely.
We look forward to seeing you next time, but until then, hasta mañana.